2025 is turning out to be a great year to be a Dexter fan. It kicked things off with Dexter Original Sin. This summer we've got Dexter Resurrection, and with all of that happening, seemed like the perfect year for me to finally review each season of Dexter. Now, I actually started this several months back and reviewed season 1, and while I kept watching through the show, I didn't pause to actually record my reviews of the seasons. I had tons of notes, but fell behind on actually doing my reviews, so it's time to finally pick that back up and review season 2 of Dexter. While I'm talking, be sure to join me down below in the comment section. Let me know, what do you think about season 2 of Dexter? This is a spoiler review, so feel free to spoil away down below. Also, you can check out my other Dexter reviews and my rankings somewhere around here. I'm going to be making my way through all of the different seasons, so by the end of this, you can have my thorough, in-depth thoughts on everything in the very near future. And today's video is brought to you by Audible. If you're like me and you like to read with your ears, not your eyes, consider signing up for a free trial of Audible at audibletrial.com/Sean Chandler. You get a free 30-day trial plus a free audiobook of your choice. They've got a whole bunch of the Dexter books, and if you're a Dexter fan, at some point in time, you have to read or listen to the first book, which is the basis for season 1. So it's just interesting to see that point of reference, that comparison in there. But then also, the books are after that are completely different from the series, so it's like this whole other world of Dexter that you can explore, and you can get one for free for signing up for a free trial of Audible at audibletrial.com/Sean Chandler. I am a massive Audible fan, and I have been now for 9 years and like 8 months. It'll be 10 years in August of this year when I've been a member with them, and I listen to audiobooks constantly. Highly recommend them. You can get that free book and that free 30-day trial at that link down below. Now let's get started. And generally speaking, when it comes to season 2 of Dexter, I've traditionally been more negative on it than a lot of people. While in a lot of ways, I feel like season 2 ironed out a lot of the kinks in season 1. I described season 1 as a little bit of a pilot season where, you know, the pilot episode of a TV show, it's the first one, they're trying to figure things out. Sometimes they shift around the setting, it's shot beforehand, and there's a lot of tweaks between the pilot and the rest of the show. Now, if you've seen the first episode of Dexter, it itself feels very different from the rest of the season, but the season itself also has a lot of things where you could feel like they were figuring out how much to just go adapt from the book they were adapting, how much to do their own thing, and figuring out characters. And while all the key ingredients were there, the calibration was in flux all throughout the first season. And you get to season 2, and they iron all of that out. Like, it's a much smoother, and it's like, we almost are immediately like, this is classic era Dexter. We know what we're doing. You can just feel that they have a competent finger on the pulse of what people want and what really works with this show and these characters. But as I said, I traditionally have been a little bit more negative on the season because it is such a kind of deconstruction of Dexter that we come out of season 1 where it kicks off and Dexter is so in his groove that I live by the code. Harry is up on this pedestal of everything. Dexter thinks he knows, understands himself and Harry. Very simple world. Rita is his cover. And because of the events of that season where he unravels the origins of his dark passenger, that he has a brother, his mother was killed, and everything kind of that Harry did in the process of where all that came from, and Harry's culpability in a lot of it, all of a sudden, his whole worldview, Harry's up on a pedestal, the code comes undone. And he's processing, I have a brother, Harry wasn't always right, Harry was lying to me, Harry manipulated me. And in the middle of this, also, you have this struggle with Rita catches him in a lie. That the cracks of having people in his life, the cover person, I guess Dexter's beard or however you want to phrase that, the cover person has led to problems. And now he's on the run trying to keep the cover to it that pushes him to fake rehab. Now, he does have an addiction that he needs to process. He is processing his past and his childhood trauma, just not the addiction that anyone thinks that he has. And likewise, Deborah is traumatized from accidentally getting engaged to a serial killer. You know, wanted to murder her and only was interested in her to get closer to her brother, and she doesn't even realize all of this. So she's traumatized too. And as a big fan of Doakes, his ultimate fate was something I was never quite crazy about, because I love the character so much, and he gets such a wasteful death at the hands of such a weak villain. Like, serves a purpose in the show, but weak villain. She's not the Trinity killer. She's crazy ex-girlfriend. Lila kills him out of crazy ex-girlfriend. I'll win Dexter back by killing Doakes. And all of that bothered me. I'll say that. After rewatching the show with much time of reflection and much of Cody Leach being like, are you insane? Season 2 is the best season. A lot of that from Cody Leach and several other groups that I'm in, and a lot of interactions with people telling me, like, this one's great. And likewise, having, you know, binged through the show a couple years, you know, back before New Blood, and processing all the stuff I really didn't like about the later seasons, this was the first time I watched season 2, and I felt like, okay, I get this. Like, this, as much as I wish Doakes was with us longer, and also I feel like the Bay Harbor Butcher plotline lends itself to the last season. It throws Dexter completely off his game. It's great stuff. Lundy, we'll talk about that just a second. But I have in my own brain as my own ideal version of the show, I feel like Bay Harbor Butcher, in its own way, could be the great end of the show. Of what we're completing this journey that Dexter's on, that's more satisfying than he becomes a lumberjack. Where else could we go, Dexter? And Bay Harbor Butcher, I feel like, could be it. And I feel like rewatching this season, playing through Dexter, so much of what the show is him slowly finding his humanity. He's not just the controlled animal, the controlled monster that Harry created. The show breaks down the barriers that Harry created, where Dexter embraces humanity. He still has the dark passenger, but he discovers humanity. And so season 2 is the humanity starting to be unleashed. And in that, he has actual passion. And it's not just he has a lust for Lila. But in the lust for Lila, also realizes, I want the actual, healthy companionship of Rita and her family. Like, I hurt people, and I actually care about that. And I disappointed my sister, and I care about that. And you have so much humanity, punching microphones, comes out of season 2. And that deconstruction, as frustrating can be, of him unpacking his worldview and reconstructing it into, here's where the code is good. That just because Harry is flawed, it doesn't mean the code is entirely broken. And just because I'm discovering freedom doesn't mean all freedom is good. And just because just because Lila accepts me for who I am, doesn't mean that's a good thing. Like, she accepts me because she's crazy as can be. So maybe sometimes there's people that the fact that someone accepts you, there's a red flag inside of that. There's aspects of Dexter that, maybe shouldn't be accepted. There's some problems here. So all those different things, it worked for me much better on this rewatch. Breaking down individual plot lines, Rita and Paul, I felt like this one was a little bit, the Rita and Paul one, I was a little bit frustrating because Paul is such a monster, a terrible person, that, Dexter's a monster, but a monster that targets it so well. And it's that the monster is targeted at bad. And he'll do evil things to bad people. And the thing about what makes Paul such a character that you hate is that he has a monster, and the monster comes out towards the people he loves. And so the dynamics of that, the way that Dexter is quite literally a serial killer. This is massive body count. He gets joy out of torturing people to death. But it's towards bad people, so you can forgive it. You like the character. As soon as their monster is leashed out on their innocent wife and their kids, and they're manipulating them, you hate that because it's such a gross quality. And so you get into season 2, and it makes you feel bad for Paul. because he's not wrong. He's like, as much as he did all these terrible things, he's not wrong. And there's lies being said about him, and he feels like so distraught. And the way that it makes you care about him is irritating to me, because I don't want to feel bad for that jerk right there. But it makes you feel bad for him. And then ultimately kind of him, his ultimate fate, dying in prison, is like, I didn't find that particularly satisfying. Like, maybe it's what needed to be in there to push Rita to, act against, but like, it goes so hard of, his death doesn't come from his bad behavior. And I think that's the side to it that's kind of off-putting. The show has a lot of, as much as about a serial killer killing people, there's a justice to it. Even when characters die, a lot of even characters that you like, people that don't deserve to die, it has a dramatically satisfying aspect to it, that they went down a path, or someone else went down a path, that was a logical conclusion of the game that they were playing, even whether they didn't know it or not. Dexter, certain choices have consequences for the people around him and things like that. Versus his was not that. His was, on this occasion, the path that like he got sent down was Dexter's lies in a way that was like just full-blown Dexter lying about him, setting him up and things like that lead to his ultimate fate. So there's a frustrating, that's kind of like why you like it. And it emphasizes just like the darkness of Dexter to have it play that way, but it's a little bit frustrating. We got Bay Harbor Butcher and Lundy, and like this is one of the best plot lines in the show. Because it's like when you have a show, like what are the obvious things that are most compelling? You have a character that is a serial killer and has a bunch of bodies out there. What's the most interesting thing you can do with that? The bodies are found. He's being hunted by the police force he works for. That's like the prime material. You can't have a plotline that good every single season. That's like the best stuff. One of the reasons I wish it was kind of saved for maybe towards the end of the show. But it's great stuff. And they bring in Lundy, who I think is a great character. That he's just like an aging agent that's kind of the wise mentor. And just very even-keeled, very honest, very real. And I just think he's like has just a very aw shucks charm to him. And at the same time, he's hitting on someone half of his age and getting into someone half his age, which like, and it does it in a way that it's slow enough and builds up to it enough. And it explains it away enough that like, there's a side to it that it just like, would the older guy be interested in the girl that's kind of throwing him very much leaning into like, would he be sure he would, but they also do give her enough daddy issues and have, she's finally attracted to someone that like, she really respects, that is puts up with her, that sees something in her, where she gets affirmations from an older man that she respects. So it ties into daddy issues. And in so many ways, there's a lot of things about him that make her someone that would be very good for her. But also there's the weird factor of the dramatic age difference and the obvious daddy issues tied into it. Where you're like, okay. Well, that's a fascinating dynamic there. But like when you have a show where you're rooting for Dexter and the police force, you'd want Dexter to get away with so we can have our show. And you introduce every one of his friends are trying to track him down. That's a fun and interesting dynamic for a show. That's like what you enjoy in things like this, is being on a path and journey like that. So, that to me is why that, like, if you're trying to, how do you close out the show? He's finally caught. He's on the run. How will he respond? What's his final choice? And you play that out. Maybe that's the next to last season or something like that. Or maybe it is the last season. That to me feels like that would be so satisfying. Because it is like the great final, the chase. They caught him. They're after him. What will he do? And when you do that as the second story, and then you have the whole rest of the show and he got away with it, feels like you burned through the best thing very early on. But that's also to say, it's great. It is one of the best plot lines that, the shirt gives him a name that nobody knows that's it, like, but it's him. It gets such great stuff. And maybe that's what sets up even the next seasons to continue to be great. So it's a tricky one. So then we have Lila, who is not a villain in the same sense as other seasons have main villains. She's not a serial killer. She's a crazy ex-girlfriend taken to the extreme that certainly has her troubled actions from the past, but then continues down that path with what she does with Doakes, what she tries to do with the kids in her desperate attempts to keep Dexter. But some of that is why somewhat of times have struggled with the season of which ones are more drawn towards some of the other seasons where it's like a real clear, this is a person that intrigues and challenges Dexter. And that's just not the case with who she is. She is the temptress. She is the person that kind of helps him process things, but then becomes part of the problem, part of what is very much kind of making him worse in many regards. And then, of course, turns out to be a psycho and making her that villain of the season. But that's the complexity of it, is that it doesn't have that same type of villain in the same sense, in the same way, where, Dexter's being chased over here, Lila's getting crazier over here, Doakes is doing his deal, but there's not that same central, the bad guy, in the same sense. And so I that was something I always kind of felt was a little bit lacking in the past. And like I said, rewatching it just played differently. As I watched it much more on kind of the character level of the way that it challenges Dexter and develops Dexter and pushes Dexter forward. All while, like I said, Bay Harbor Butcher is very much some of their best stuff to work from. And like having someone like both Lundy chasing him and then Doakes chasing him, I think those are two very different people chasing him in very different senses that they don't even know. One of them doesn't know that they're chasing Dexter, and the other one doesn't know what they're looking for. But that's kind of the real conflict inside of the season, rather than there's that guy over there that Dexter wants to stop, but also he's interested in them and wants to learn from them a little bit. No, it's like Dexter is just himself. He is the serial killer of the season in this other sense. And kind of the final one to talk about on here, I'm a big Doakes fan, and it's interesting rewatching the show, like very much spending a lot of time on the thought of Doakes. And as soon as they kill him off, it felt like the show lost some. Like, to me, it was like, oh no, we lost one of the most fun dynamics of the show. And at the same time, watching seasons 3, 4, 5, I'm actually towards the very end of season 6 at this point in time. I'm not watching those other seasons feeling like there's a piece missing. And that's what's kind of interesting about that dynamic of, at the same time that I'm like disappointed to lose someone after season 2, he also didn't leave a hole in the season that kind of needed to be filled. Where even, for those of you that have not seen season 4 and are watching along or whatever like that, I'm alluding to spoilers that are season 4, season 5 stuff, but there's a character that's not in season 5 because of season 4, and intentionally you watch season 5 and you feel a hole in the middle of the season, that something is now missing in the show, and you're supposed to feel that. And the season is about how do we rebuild the show and adjust things in light of this hole. And with Doakes, as much as I even enjoy that's a much more fun character to me that we lost, Doakes doesn't leave a hole in the season or in the show afterwards. But I think the part of the frustration to me is that Doakes was right. And instead of anything good coming from that, instead of it, like, he's the foil while not being like morally, I think he's in the right. He might be a jerk and a bully, but he's right. This guy's a creep because he's a killer, and he can constantly tell something is very off here. I just need to find out what it is. And he can't imagine it's nearly as bad as it ends up being. And he figures it out. And by then he ends up, stumbling into a trap of this, not realizing, constantly underestimating Dexter, like always knowing there's more there, but not realizing his enemy, the person he's chasing, is this incredibly successful serial killer that's right in front of you, that's getting away with it, that no one has a clue or a whiff that it's him, except for this guy. And so that he just knows something wrong, but he doesn't know what it is. And that ultimately leads to his demise. And the complexity of Doakes' final episodes, where Dexter has always had this adversarial relationship with Doakes, but now that he can be honest with Doakes, it since we don't have to, doesn't have to pretend to be dopey Dexter or anything like that. There's like this very interesting rapport that forms between the two of them. Now, Doakes is just trying to talk him up because he just wants to live. And at the same time, Dexter has a sense of relief. This whole thing is he's trying to figure out, how do I balance my life? How do I live with the lies? I found someone I can be honest with. He's playing with all of this. And this person that kind of hates him and has been hunting him down, he doesn't have to lie to him anymore. And he finds that refreshing. And he respects the fact that, hey, you figured it out. You're the one that actually knew something was up. Everyone else is clueless. Hey, I respect that. And there's something about that, once again, but all this, he was right. He figured it out. He hunted it out. And there's all these little moments where you go, oh man, why didn't you couldn't have said something more. You couldn't have done a little bit to try and let someone else have the package. If anything happens to me, send this to LaGuardia. Send this in. Here's everything I figured out. Here's what I'm piecing together. He doesn't do any of that stuff. And thus seals his own fate in many regards, whether that had been Dexter's framing him or what ends up happening. But he comes to an end, and that, like I said, that's frustrating for me. But yeah, it's a season that I have I have all these thoughts about what maybe I would have done with the show, in particular in light of how badly I would say it ends up ending, and what I think they might have been able to do with this plot line if it was later on. But once again, the background of the Bay Harbor Butcher gives such depth to the next few seasons in a lot of ways. So what do you make with that? I don't know, but the season played so much better for me this time than it has in the past. And rewatching it, just realizing how good this show was. It's in its golden era. Like I said, I've made it to season 6, and watching how much it reaches a point in time, I was like, yeah, this is not good. This is how sharp and sudden that drop off happens. Because it's so funny and it's thoughtful and it's able to make you care about a character that on paper is a monster and just obviously twisted. That's the whole point. It's just so well done, so good. And that they found all of these journeys and little paths to take them on to explore the humanity of a monster. I don't know, just it's those shows where you're that really was something special. There's a reason that 19 years after the show debuted, we're getting 2 new seasons this year, that people are still talking about it, that you're watching this video right now. They found something special. And what's interesting is that this is an example of where the adaptation, the television adaptation, so transcended the source material of the books. I've only read the first book, and it's the basis of the first season. And I would say the first season is better than the book. It just amplifies it, expands all of it. And the characters just seem so much richer and better. And then they kind of went in their own direction with the show. So I can't really compare after that. But the television show is what people love so much more so than people talk about the books. I'm sure there's a place where people talk about the books, but very much so the movies are the dominant, or excuse me, the TV show is what people really love. And they cast it right. They got the right people, and they just developed it in a direction that just was really good. And like I said, as someone who's in the past been critical of season 2, really connected with it much more this time. Let me know your thoughts down below. If you're interested in listening to the audiobooks, you can use my link down below in the description and get a free trial of Audible, and you get a free audiobook with that. The first book in particular, if you're a fan of the show, is very interesting because that is season 1, but season 1 amplifies it and expands it. So very much if you're a Dexter fan, at some point in time, you have to read it or listen, like if I do, to the first one. You can do that down below at that link if you get that free trial. And check out my other videos, my rankings, all that fun stuff, and more is coming.